I am the famous American. Welcome to the place of the future. This is the year 2020. I live in the future. One day you will join me in the year 2020. But what's strange that even in the year 2020, which is the future, you would imagine that in the United States, we wouldn't still be having conversations about Civil War monuments because they're still up. You know, in my hometown of Fort Payne, Alabama, my entire life, there's been that statue there in the middle of town celebrating a Civil War hero as they bill it. And when you look and you read it, you're basically saying that he was a hero, those like him were heroes, the Confederate side. It even goes as far as basically to say that God has blessed these souls that fought for the right cause of fighting for the Confederacy. Yeah, that's totally messed up. But that's, my hometown's only one of many that contains one of these statues. And so I happen to be looking at the news in this local paper for the Nashville, Tennessee area, and it's an article talking about the process of removing these statues. There's one in Franklin, Tennessee, and right there in the middle of the downtown, you'll see this. Yeah, I believe they said it was built in 1899. So this thing has been there for a long time, still there. How and why? But there's something called the Daughters of the Confederacy, which was this group who ultimately fought to get them there. But just imagine this, and I feel like I've heard a comedian talk about this before, but I want to quote from this article here about this. And it's from a pastor of a church who's working on basically getting these removed. So this, it's called Telling a Fuller Story about this pastor. So it says, community group works against racial imbalances in Franklin area. So here we go. Here's the quote from Pastor Kevin Riggs, pastor of the Franklin Community Church. Quote, I don't know anywhere else in the world you could go where you have a battle that was fought and the side that loses puts up all the monuments and then controls the narrative of what actually happened. You have these other stories now that balance it out, end quote. So let's just process that. The side that lost the war basically celebrates with monuments to show their heroes, even though they lost. That was the whole agenda. Now, the closest thing I can come to this, I feel like I watched a comedian who said he did a tour of Germany, and basically along all these locations of World War II, the tour guide basically just didn't even mention, just ignored it altogether. Well, that's one thing, but here in the South, in the United States, we still have these remaining, obviously very racist relics up in the town squares. And from the side that lost, we're supposed to have compassion with the side that lost. It's really a crazy concept. But ultimately, I make this video just so that you can share in the humor of how ridiculous this is. And I'm going to quote this pastor again. I don't know anywhere else in the world you could go where you could have a battle that was fought and the side that loses puts up all the monuments and then controls the narrative of what actually happened. So it is interesting. I wonder, it's got to be a matter of time before finally we say we don't want these statues up praising the Confederate side. It clearly is morally wrong. Now, I'm not a political guy, so I'm not like, oh, we got to tear them down. And I'm like, ultimately, more important, we need to recognize how ridiculous it is that they're still up in the first place. For me, it's less even about social justice, and it's more about, like, we should actually move these down because we should be so ashamed of ourselves for still having them up because it's ridiculous that they were ever put up to begin with. So it even goes beyond a moral issue. For me, it becomes a matter of poor taste. Like, we need to, we still have these things up. Like, it should be so embarrassing. And the Daughters of the Confederacy, that's that group that still exists apparently, and they're responsible for putting that up. So it's fascinating, it's embarrassing, it's ridiculous, and yes, of course, there's this whole moral responsibility of it. But for me, the embarrassing concept, almost, because it's almost like at this stage, we can't even say, morally we need to tear these down because there's going to be people who try to, well, it's our heritage, all this stuff. It's embarrassing. The Confederate side lost, and statues were put up years later. Even I researched, I've watched other YouTube videos. A lot of these statues were put in the late 1800s up until like the 1960s. It was basically a way to combat the concept of civil rights. So yes, pure racism all involved in it. But at this point, I just feel that it's even gone beyond a moral responsibility. It's a matter of, why do we want to embarrass ourselves with still having these up? Like, let's correct this embarrassing thing of putting these statues up. That was completely foolish. What are your thoughts on it? Your thoughts belong right here.